The meeting open for ordinary business, and we're down to item 8.2, which is the health and safety report, and Neville Williams going to deliver that. Health and safety instead of Nick. Welcome, Neville. We're in your hands.
Thank you, Chair Barry. Good afternoon, councillors. Unfortunately, Nick Ollington is unwell today, so he's had to defer his attendance. However, you have me and you have Marie Fullerton, who is the subject matter expert for the organisation Health and Safety as well. So I'll endeavour to walk you through the report, and if there's any very detailed type of questions, we'll defer those to Marie to answer. The report you're well and truly familiar with by now. It's been the same format that we've used for quite some time. There's no outstanding matters, in my view, that the report points out that you should be concerned about. Our systems are working well. The processes are operating as they should. I'll take the report as read, but highlight a couple of elements and invite questions as we go, if you like. So as you are well and truly aware, there's been changes to the requirements around mask wearing that have been announced in the back in end of March, and those came into effect on the 4th of April for removal of the vaccine passes and changes to criteria around mask wearing. However, staff are still asked to wear masks, and as you're well and truly aware, when moving around the building. Also, we've seen the removal of the requirement for staff to work in teams as part of our business continuity arrangements, and they're now returning to the building in increasing numbers, and we're seeing those on most days go up, but at the same time recognising that a number of staff do work from home, and that's within our policy and our expectations, but it's pleasing to see the numbers coming back into the office over recent weeks. The flu vaccination program has commenced and is underway, and over 120 of our staff have now been vaccinated. Now, look, I'll just check with Marie, but I understand that also applies to councillors. Yes. So, yes, the offer of vaccines of the flu vaccine. So it's available, obviously, from a number of environments, but should you wish, you could avail yourself of that service here. No lost time injuries or notifications to WorkSafe in the month of April as well, which I think is really worth noting. As I said earlier, the report is in the format that you're well and truly familiar with now. There's a breakdown in section 1 of the report from item line 13 or section 13, using a bit of a case study around architectural window solutions. Giving, I guess, a bit of a context around what's happening in the broader health and safety environment that is of relevance, and noting that we keep close eye on these external events to make sure that we understand what they are and how they might apply in our operating environment and context. As already mentioned, we have removed that requirement around COVID vaccine passes, and the mask wearing is in a different context. The item 19 talks about our process for managing staff who are using our COVID leave process, and that is that if they have a family member who is unwell and they're forced to isolate as a result and close contact within their house, or they themselves have tested positive, that they go through what we call a Discover workflow process, where they enter their details. It cascades immediately to the manager, to the director, and there's a sign-off process around acknowledging that we're aware of these situations, that if necessary we've taken the remedial action through the health and safety team for the welfare of any staff who might be in close contacts with that staff member over a period of time. To the best of our knowledge, I understand there's 300 staff have applied for COVID leave under those criteria, of 190-ish approximately, who have contracted the virus, and the majority of whom have recovered. But as you'd appreciate, as with the external environment, people contact this virus on a regular and ongoing basis, and numbers fluctuate. But overall, I think, given the general nature of the decline in numbers being reported across the community, that we would expect to see ours start to taper off potentially. So we're all keeping our fingers crossed on that. We do use RATS tests, and those are specified when we do that under section 20 of the report. And we've recently applied that requirement on new staff, so new recruits coming into the organisation undertake a test as well. And if people have been through certain situations where they may have had exposure, we'd ask them to undertake a test as well. Under section 22 and onwards of the report, we're looking at the common critical health risks that the health and safety risks that have been identified that apply across more than one directorate, and some of the critical risks under which bow ties have been completed. Those are itemised as in section 23, where it's being struck by a plant or vehicle, helicopter use, loading and unloading, and those are reported in more detail further down the report. As you're aware, we're starting the, commenced the workplace psychological risk bow tie process. That's well underway, and staff are well engaged with that, and it will shortly be concluded with a report to the executive leadership team outlining the next steps forward. And that process has been led by Marie, so she'll be able to give you more details if you wished. As you can see from section 26 down, we go into more detail around those 7 common critical risks and what their key controls are and when they are reviewed in the primary directorates that are affected by them. And there are consistent ones there in terms of primarily around the Resource Use Directorate and the ICM Directorate feature in the majority of cases, but there's also the other directorates as well that get captured from time to time, the more general risks. In terms of section 2 of the report and the reporting and investigations, we see that for the month of April there were 6 event reports, which are really around injury or loss, where the risk was realised, and those are itemised accordingly under section 31, as well as noting there was a potential risk or a near miss was reported as well in the month of April. So for the 2022 calendar year, we've had 46 incidents reported, and those are compared to the previous years going back to 2015. And as you can see, the numbers are comparatively low for this point in the cycle, and there'll be a number of reasons for that. Primarily, I'd say it's a number of Marie may have another comment on this, but given that the workplace has been in low occupancy, given that we've had some closures as well during this period, we've reduced the probability of risk and harm occurring to our staff as a result of that. Also see that, and this has been previously mentioned, around WorkSafe inspection into the non-compliance of the hazardous substances store in this building, and corrective actions have been undertaken. You may have noticed that yourself when you've come into the car park and seen the arrangement of the cabinets and so forth, and changes in signage. As previously mentioned, there's been no reports to WorkSafe in April and no lost time injuries recorded in April.
Thanks, Neville.
That's pretty much the summary.
Fine. Yes. Moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye.
Hang on.
You got a question? I didn't stop that. I thought you wanted to wind it on. Thank you.
Well, I think we could have taken it. We could have taken it as read.
Okay. Sweet.
Look, I'm pretty concerned about the near miss reporting, and it's one of those subtle signals that we're getting sent that this company, council, is not taking health and safety seriously enough. So I want to know what action. What my specific question is: what have you, Mr. Chief Executive, what have you, Neville, said to the staff about near miss reporting? Because we should be very concerned about paragraph 30. And I want to know what action you're taking. My first question, while you're compiling your thoughts for that, my second question is the psychological risk bow tie. You said something like the staff are well into this. This has caught my attention because I think this will be one of the most insightful bow ties that we do. So I want to go on the journey with you with this bow tie. So are there any sort of provisional insights that you are gaining from that bow tie to date? Because if the staff are nearly finished, you should have a top 3 or 4 insights that are really interesting for us.
I'll pass that response over to Marie. However, just in respect to your first question around near misses, a campaign has commenced, and that commenced at the April Managers Forum to raise awareness. And we come back to that core message around safely home everybody every day. And so there is a campaign in play to continue to raise and maintain staff's awareness about the absolute importance of near-miss reporting. That won't just be left to idle, that will ramp up and that will continue. But I'll pass the microphone over to Marie now to answer your second question if you're satisfied with that response.
If I could just, if I could just add to the near-miss reporting project. So that has been running over a month already, and we're actually seeing an increase in reporting. So it'd be interesting to see what those numbers look like at the end of the month. The sessions include some education with managers and staff around the importance, and that's been rolled out across all of the directorates. So it's not quite finished yet, but we're definitely seeing a change. We're also asking staff to use observations. So there's an observation tab in Dempstra, and that's where you might go out as a manager and observe good health and safety practice. So we're encouraging the use of that part of Dempstra as well.
Very good.
Yes, so it'd be interesting to report that back. In terms of the bow tie, it has been a very interesting exercise. We did want to do some of this face-to-face, and we allowed people to come and have a look at the bow tie as it was being constructed, to have a discussion with the team and to add their comments. But that's taking a little bit of time, is we are cross-referencing what results we're getting against the ISO standard 45003, which is an ISO standard that was released last year specific to psychological harm and risk in the workplace. It's a first ever. There hasn't been one released prior to this one. The other thing we're doing is cross-referencing that information to the 31 causal factors under our culture work. And I think when we bring that back, you will see some very interesting correlations between what staff are saying, the 31 causal factors and the ISO standard. So.
Thank you. Just before, yes. So the right. So the question from the councillor was, because the people online mightn't hear this, was, are the councillors going to be engaged with respect to this bow tie?
I hadn't intended doing the consultation with the councillors, but I'm open to hearing feedback.
Yep.
And we could talk about
so
that.
Just to, I'll give you an example of how I've participated. I've actually participated in the helicopter bow tie, where I sought to use my experience, quite significant in that area, to assist staff. And I would say to any councillor, if they have, and I've been welcomed by staff to put my views and my inputs, so I would say that would be appropriate.
That's right.
That if you feel that you've got something to offer, then staff are open to that. So, councillor, does that meet your objective? No?
That's fair at best, and on the verge of negligent at worst. You guys sat through a very torrid meeting today, and you got sent some very powerful signals. There are people in the room who are hurting, and we've tried to navigate our way through this with systems and processes and policies and smooth talking and whatnot, but it hasn't worked. And recently I've had cause personally to reflect on my role as a councillor, because there's some things happened recently where I thought, yeah, this is on the verge of being unsafe for me. And I've been in some pretty torrid situations in another life. So no, I don't think it's right that you should just wait for us to put up a hand and come and see you. I think you should be a little bit more, I mean, if we are going to drive a change in this chamber, this is the sort of tool to get inside the minds of people to find out what we can do to be better. That's where I'm going, Chair. So I think asking us to put a hand up is enough.
Kathy.
Yeah, following on from what Andrew's talking about with near-miss reporting, I just wanted to comment. A few of us were emailed about another pest control incident involving a contractor in May. And we've been told that it will be reported to the Integrated Catchment Management Committee. But I just wanted to say it's a compliance breach has been identified. We've said previously that we want all councillors to be made aware when these things happen. So I would like to just make sure that in future that not just a handful of councillors get told, that all councillors get emailed about those things. But also I just wanted to say that I'd like to see the report when that's finished. I'd like to see that come through health and safety, and, you know, for it to come through as a compliance issue, because I think we need to keep aware of all of these things and how regularly they happen for us to be able to identify what level of risk there is there on an ongoing basis. Thank you.
So I'm just checking to see, a check-in with the CEO as to whether council determined that or whether it was a desire. I just wanted, I think for the views of this table, the councillors, they need to understand exactly what's going to be reported to them. So I want to ask the CEO to clarify whether any incident should be brought before there. My perception had been there's a clearinghouse first, which is through ICM, because my own personal view is that you go to the appropriate group to consider the matter. It might then be reported from there to all councillors. That's only my personal view. But if council has a different view, I also want to hear the CEO's view, because that pattern is what I'm looking for. But you might have another.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. There's several things been raised. I'll just deal with the last one first. And the question was asked with me about the health and safety. I'll come back about the misreporting. I'll come back to that. I did have a slide I could talk to in the councillor catch-up about that incident that you're referring to, Councillor White. I wasn't sure if it was going to be anything of interest, but I do have a slide in that pack if it was going to be. I think that there was, the nature of the incident, every operational thing that happens in our pest operations, it's a very fine line to know what's the matter that is just an operational matter, or what needs to be reported to council. There's something that has been reported that has gone to the EPA to have a look at to see whether it's, something of concern. I'm not sure if under health and safety and whatever, it's a matter that needs to be reported to council. There was a discussion about how we should go the process with the chair about how we'd do it. And I think the advice was that we collectively agreed on, it's probably best to let the constituent councillors of that area know and the ICMC committee know in the first instance.
Yeah, that's the first instance.
In the first instance, yep. And as I say, I did have a slide today to be able to let councillors know.
So maybe the approach, if councillors are happy, we can discuss this further in the session with the CEO as to what we feel is the appropriate and he can take that away, and then we consider the best approach. Would that, because what I'm doing is not taking off the table in terms of ignoring it. It's a matter that councillors have indicated that they wish to have discussed. So you happy with that or not? Fred?
Yeah, well, through the chair, this is the time where the rubber hits the road. This is where we make decisions, and this is where we can make change, not at the CE catch-up. So I would prefer that this issue dealt with in a formal matter. Now, is my personal opinion.
Right. So just to interject there, the CEO has indicated that he has slides and material to present to council. He doesn't have them ready to present to council at this point, correct?
Exactly, and it's got to be worked through in terms of the incident, whether there was a breach of anything before we even decided the outcome of that incident.
So what we're seeing here is the incident is by far from being identified as what it is, the consequences of it, scale of it, and so on and so forth. We are not here to sit here in judgment every time an operational matter might be brought to council. That is our CEO's job. That's what I expect him to do. We should have a view about what we need to learn about in terms of incidents. And the CEO, I think, can take a strong message from here that there is an interest in what incidents get reported and that they be reported. I think, first of all, you've got to get to the appropriate committee, whatever that is, and also the relevant constituents, and then obviously council, because I don't see the value in shortcutting processes to create a stimulus before the matter is considered. So that's how I see it, and I do take on board the councillors' views there. Fred, I'll allow you to have one further comment before.
I agree, because it was a near miss. It wasn't an incident. But I'd still like it in this part of the meeting
I know that
all incidents
are
reported to all councillors as reported as being good governance by Mark Abbott, and not a select few, but an inclusive team.
I think you're onto it. We have to have the reporting. It's the question of when it's in the early stages of being evaluated, and then bring it forward. Kathy.
I think when we spoke about it previously, when there had been another incident which we didn't find out about for 6 weeks, what we said was that we wanted to know about these incidents, and we do understand that they need to be fully investigated, but we all wanted the heads up that an incident had happened, even if we had to wait for 6 weeks until the final report on it. I mean, this was it basically said a breach was identified by the Department of Conservation. So it sounds like a breach was identified. So, I mean, I think it is important to us, again, as I said, for us to know that these things happen, just for us to have an awareness of it in terms of a risk assessment of these kinds of activities. So we need to have consistency in terms of everybody knowing.
Thank you. And thank you for the discussion, CEO, and then through to Stephen Ebay.
Thank you. Just going back to report, that was April, things that happened in April. I understand the conversation was a matter you're raising, which is relevant to health and safety, but it wouldn't be in the report in terms of reporting mechanism because of the time frame. Just going back to Councillor McPherson's questions about the near-miss reporting and incident reporting, absolutely taken seriously. It's why it's in the report. It's why as soon as we saw it was discussed at the executive team, we immediately took it through the managers forum. It's been in the current, which is the information that goes to all staff. And I've already talked with Wendy about making sure it's reinforced in my kōrero, which is a fortnightly newsletter, if you like, that I send out to staff. So it is absolutely taken seriously. Just want to give you that assurance, Councillor McPherson. Thanks.
Councillor Kneebone.
Thank you. Just in terms of the reporting of non-compliance, etc., with pest control activities. Just remind everyone that this issue was raised at an ICM committee last year. It was subsequently reported back to ICM last month. You were present, Kathy, and as was Fred, that the committee, ICM committee, would receive an annual report on environmental compliance every year, and that would be, this sort of thing would be included in that. And the other part of it was whether non-target deaths or non-compliance with the permission regulation, that would be reported through to ICM, which I think meets every 2 months. And now, if councils have a desire to change that, then that's fine, that's a process. But to say here that that the staff are in breach of what was previously agreed on is completely incorrect, you know. So that was agreed at ICM, and those minutes are yet to come before this council. They're in train at the moment. But as I say, if the council's got a will to change it, that's fine. But that's where it's sitting at the moment. And you were present at that meeting, Kathy.
Thank you. I will accept the reply.
Thank you. Yeah, I think what I was pointing out was that in a previous council meeting, we had said during a health and safety report, and I see other people nodding, so it's not just my imagination, that we all wanted to know. We all wanted to be aware of these things. And yes, I was at the Integrated Catchment Management Committee meeting, and I do just want to clarify that the incident that we were talking about specifically there was a separate incident to this one. So that was another completely separate pest control incident. So I guess this just makes it even more of an issue for me that we do have regular incidents. And this is why I think councillors need to be aware of them all, even if it's just a message that comes through from our director, just basically telling us that this has happened and that an investigation is underway. That's all that I expect. But I do think that we did make it really clear that in health and safety, we wanted to know about these things. And so, yeah, I don't think that I've said anything.
So maybe the approach is, I'm just making a suggestion because I think our processes are right, except that it might be appropriate that the chair of ICM is able to communicate with councillors over matters before they might get to the written reports coming through, that they just say that what they're dealing with. So if there's any query back, then I think the chair of the relevant committee is the best place to deal with the other councillors. That's the sort of way I'm starting to move things. I see the chairs of committees taking quite a significant role in terms of communicating in the area of their mahi. So that is an emphasis that I'm looking for going forward. And if there's a situation where a chair sees that, hey, this is what councillors have indicated that they want to hear about, then the chair should be sending out a message, and I welcome that. So that's the sort of refinement I see. I think it's all taken on board. I will take a quick comment from you, Russ.
I think Kathy's right, Mr. Chair. It was, the one I remember was the dropping of the 1080 on the bulldozer. I mean, that we de-escalated that, but, you know, to come up to my office and just casually and find that there's a meeting, and that's not good enough, because we squashed that pretty quickly with our comms team, but it should have been, the chair should have been made immediately aware of it. And look, we don't want to get in the kitchen, Mr. Chair, but it depends on the level of kind of, and we're intelligent people around the table. When is something like dropping 1080 on bulldozers, even if it's not directly our contract, indirectly we get the blame, and we were to be informed in the future something of that level of severity.
Thank you. So there's been a good discussion on this. Quick one, very quick.
Very quick. It was just to be supportive of the comments that Anne made at the start about things we've learned from that ISO standard and through the activities you've done. It'd be really good to get the top things that we could consider as a council when we meet, say next Tuesday for that workshop or after just to help us with our thinking to apply controls as soon as possible. They might not be perfect, but the 80-20 rule might be enough to get started. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your input. I have one question on this report, and I was really pleased to see that defib come in of the reception centre. There's a plural being used, defibs with an S. Does that mean we have them elsewhere in the building, other than just reception?
We just covered all other sites as well.
Oh, so
with our
you've got-
communication, yes.
So you've got them wider. We have one in the building,
Yes.
and then we have them elsewhere. Thank you.
And councillors, if I can just clarify for all of your purpose while you're here today, it's in the entranceway, next to reception on the wall when you come up, just so that you're clear where it is. And I'll just take this opportunity to remind you, we also have a sick bay in the building if you're unwell. There's a sick bay that can be used.
So I'll have a mover in a second. Let's have a mover. Russ and Pamela for this. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carry. So we now move on to the amendments to the council appointments, item 8.3. Moved by Russ. I'll second that. Any comments? No comment. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. So we now move to matters related to excluding the public. So I ask Democracy Services just to run through the reasoning behind that, please, just in succinct form. Thank you. We have a mover, Councillor Mahuta and Councillor Nebo.
Afternoon all. We're moving into public excluded purely to confirm and receive minutes from previous subcommittee and committees reporting to council. The reason for entering public excluded are for the reasons that were specified by each committee when they were in public excluded, which include the protection of the privacy of natural persons and commercial and industrial negotiations. All of the PEC's reasoning is in your agenda on page 88.
Thank you. So we're now moving on a second. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. Now we've moved into public excluded. Is